Hey everybody, welcome to another video review. So following up on my last review, which was about Jonathan Green's Ace Gamebook series, and that one's a little bit longer because I had to sort of preface it by explaining a little bit more about what game books are and sort of the history of it and choosing your own adventure and things like that. Then I went into that book. So following up on that, for this video, I'd like to talk about the second book. The Neverland Here Be Monsters was the third book in the Ace book series. So this one is the second one, and it's called The Wicked Wizard of Oz. Let me give you a close-up on this. So this is really cool. Actually I neglected while I was reviewing it, unfortunately, I apologize for that. I neglected to talk about the artwork. So the artwork is by a gentleman named Kev Crossley. Is that? Let me make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. Because Kev Crossley. So the illustrations are by him, and they add so much richness to the book, especially with some of Jonathan's steampunk designs and descriptions. The artwork does a lot to convey it, so it's beautiful artwork. You can just tell by the cover that it's remarkable. So I have to say that I actually like the artwork for the Wicked Wizard of Oz more than even Neverland. I think Neverland is okay. It's good, but I think that there's just something about the design of the artwork for Wicked Wizard that just appeals to me more. Okay. Look at the back, and look at his design for the Scarecrow, for instance, which is spectacular. Here's the design here for the Tin Man, for instance. So before we even talk about the book, I just want to say the artwork is gorgeous, and I'm very, very happy about that. And really went quite a ways in getting me absorbed in the book. And this one, there's a lot of artwork, a lot of beautiful full color plates, full page artwork. This is an example, for instance, of one of them where I'm going to meet him in the novel Pumpkinhead. So artwork, fantastic. So let's talk about the book. So this book, is important to note, is second in the series. So Neverland came afterward. How do I feel about this book? It's his riff. I think I was just searching for the right word. It's his riff on, obviously, The Wizard of Oz. Just like Neverland Here Be Monsters was his riff on Barrie's Peter Pan and Wendy and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Lost World. I think I like this book a little bit better, but it's close. It's pretty close. But I think it just depends on what source material appeals to you more. And I like Oz a little bit more, and I think that he did a better job riffing on the characters from Oz. I think in Neverland it lost just a teeny bit of focus because he was trying to draw from too many elements. And you know how sometimes, I guess when you're cooking or whatever, you throw these ingredients in, and sometimes you're experimenting, and every once in a while it's amazing, and then other times it's not so good. And I think depending on the person, it might be vastly different for different people. Like, for instance, putting something spicy on ice cream or something like that, which was it sriracha or something like that on ice cream. Just weird things with flavor and taste that you would think never go together, but then somehow it's like, oh, it's actually surprisingly pleasing or something like that. And so you don't normally associate prehistoric monsters and dinosaurs and that type of thing with Tinkerbell, Wendy, Peter Pan. And while the result in Neverland is certainly very compelling and interesting, and I already went in depth on that, I think, at least for me, I prefer the more pure, steampunk take on the Wizard of Oz characters. I think the story in this one is really, really good. Again, don't want to spoil it, but this is sort of like Jonathan Green's sequel, or his version of the sequel to the events of The Wizard of Oz. So this is not a retelling of The Wizard of Oz. This takes place after the events of the original book or movie, or both, depending on what you've been exposed to. So you go back to Oz, and there's a new threat. I don't want to go too deeply other than that. But this is similar to Neverland, and actually this I think is the first. Again, I haven't read Alice. Do you get to play as different characters in Alice? I guess I'll eventually, hopefully, I'll get the game book and I'll be able to review that. But in this one, for sure, it follows the same thing. Where Neverland, I guess I should say Neverland is following the Wicked Wizard of Oz when it first pioneered this, which is that you do get to play as different characters. And in this one, it's obvious you get to play as Dorothy, Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion, and their versions, Jonathan's versions of these characters, which is really, really cool. The mechanics are very similar. Again, you all start off at a different section, and then depending on what section you finally wind up on, as you're choosing your adventure, so to speak, you may have to add or subtract numbers to the section and turn to a new section depending on the character you're playing. Once again, the overall story is pretty immutable with some exceptions, but the overall story is going to be the same. You all start off at different places, depending on which character you play, but you all converge into one part, and then you'll split up again, and you have a lot of choices. So this is kind of Neverland followed a very similar format. I feel like the story here is a little bit shorter than Neverland. However, the game book to me was a bit more challenging. There were certain segments of it, especially, we'll get into some of the secret characters, so to speak, where there were more puzzles, okay? Puzzles and riddles, and in order to get the answer, it wasn't good enough to just say, do you know the answer? If you know the answer, turn to section, etc. You had to figure it out, and then you had to convert the answer to a numerical number, and you have to flip to that section. So I do respect that. But he wasn't too mean about it. I thought that the game was balanced pretty well. There weren't a lot of instant death sections. So again, depending on how you feel about those, different game book authors have different styles. Some of them are pretty merciless. Jonathan was actually one of them during some of his fighting fantasy work, I remember. But he rarely would have you have a situation where if you don't have what he wants, he'll just kill you. He usually presents multiple ways of achieving the same objective. It's just that some are harder, some require a little bit more checks, some lose you a bit more stamina. The game has really cool abilities. So each character has a certain number of abilities that they can use. They're varied, and they can be used during the adventure to get you through a lot of tough spots. I'll just give you some examples. For instance, there has brains. You are particularly clever and knowledgeable, able to think your way out of tricky situations and solve otherwise mind-bending puzzles. There's a crow master. You're able to force crows and other carrion birds to obey your will. There's Over the Rainbow, which is really cute. You're not native to the land of Oz, and so if you find yourself in a tight spot, you can change the nature of the world around you, although this may result in you actually making things worse for yourself rather than better. So it's an ability that can, come with some cons, that are a little bit dangerous. There's the Pen is Mightier, which is something he uses quite a bit. He used this in Neverland as well, where you are not native to the land of Oz, and on occasion, to avoid coming to blows with an enemy, you may alter the narrative of the encounter, enabling yourself to get away unscathed. So those are really, really good abilities. You can only use them a certain number of times during the adventure. And as you go through the adventure, you may accrue other uses if you're particularly good. One of the other things I really enjoyed about the book is that you don't start off with all the abilities. And so, for instance, Dorothy starts off with just Over the Rainbow and the Pen is Mightier, but depending on how you play her, she may, get other abilities. Okay, I don't want to spoil anything more than that. So I thought, again, great dynamics, great gameplay balance, great gameplay mechanics, a very enjoyable story, and very fun to see it from different points of view. And somewhat challenging, okay? Not as challenging as the hardest game books, so I don't know if that's not necessarily what Jonathan's going for. I mean, he's certainly capable of writing some ridiculously difficult game books, as I can attest from reading some of his fighting fantasy game books. But I think he was trying to. I think he's trying to do different things with the Ace game books, and I think writing a killer hard game book may not be high on the priority list. I mean, certainly they should be challenging, but there's other things he wants to go for, specifically the branching paths, and again, sort of weaving this narrative, but telling it from multiple points of view. I mean, this is something that's really new. Maybe it's been done before, but never, in my opinion, to this level of sophistication and to this level of challenge, okay? So there's that. I talked about the art already. So I guess the thing is some criticisms. Again, I like this book better than Neverland, actually. I enjoyed all of them, enjoyed both so far. I haven't read Beowulf or the Krampus Night Before Christmas yet. But of the two I've read so far, both were fantastic, but I do like Wicked Wizard of Oz a little bit better. Going into some of the critiques, I would say that the main bones of the storyline, obviously, you should be reading Dorothy's storyline to get sort of the entire arc, the story, the highlights. I felt like the Scarecrow and the Lion were more similar. I mean, one of the things about Neverland is I did feel that Tiger Lily and Captain Hook were drastically different, from Peter and Wendy's story arc necessarily. In this one, I felt that if you're playing as Dorothy, the Lion, or the Scarecrow, there aren't too many differences, okay? Because, as you're playing, you meet the Scarecrow and the Lion pretty early on as Dorothy. And so when you're playing as either the Lion or the Scarecrow, you don't have a lot of unique story before you wind up meeting up with Dorothy. And once you wind up meeting with Dorothy, the narrative becomes very similar again, okay? They each have a little bit of an adventure before they finally see her or meet her, but that doesn't go very far. It's usually a little mini encounter, or just, in the case of the Scarecrow, it's even less than that. So I think those three characters have a very, they're different, but not that different, okay? The Tin Man, I think, has one of the most different storylines because he joins up with them almost halfway through the adventure. So spoiler, I guess minor spoilers, but he doesn't join up until a little bit later, and so there's way more meat to a story. There's more bulk to a story. You find out more about what he's doing before he joins up with the main party. But then once he joins up, again, it doesn't diverge quite as much. I feel like each party member, from the Scarecrow to the Lion to the Tin Man, they have one, a unique twist on their narrative, but just one. There's not two or three. It's not markedly different. It's just one, okay? And the ending to each was also a little bit disappointing because it's basically the same ending, but just with different character viewpoints. And it's they're different by just little lines of dialogue. I mean, essentially the ending is identical for Dorothy, the Lion, the Scarecrow, and the Tin Man. Identical ending pretty much. It's just the dialogue is a little bit different because of whose viewpoint you're doing. Versus Neverland, where I think the ending for Tiger Lily was drastically different than the ending for Peter and Wendy. And Peter and Wendy were a little bit different. No, I think Peter goes to London and Wendy goes to America at the end of that book, from what I remember. And of course, both Tiger Lily and then Peter and Wendy's, those two endings were very, very different from Captain Hook's ending. So I did appreciate that part, okay? Now, getting to the Wicked Wizard of Oz, this is the one where he takes the Kickstarter sort of backer rewards to the next level. So if you're one of the original backers, which unfortunately I'm not, there's 2 hidden characters actually in the book. And the only way to sort of get their statistics and their abilities and where to start and all these, like, do you add 30 or 20 or 10, etc., is you have to be a Kickstarter backer. And that's a shame because I thought the wizard story was average. It was okay, it was good, but it wasn't like earth-shaking. And again, there were some differences, but I think there's more differences from the wizard arc, the Wizard of Oz. There's more differences from that arc than, say, between the Lion or the Scarecrow and Dorothy. But it still ends pretty similarly, except now the wizard is part of the group. So it was okay, but I would have enjoyed that. And then, of course, you also get to play the Wicked Witch of the West. And that one is amazing. It's actually my favorite. Aside from maybe like Dorothy, right, the main narrative, the Wicked Witch of the West, her story is like significantly different and very enjoyable. Really good, great puzzles, great narrative, great character. It's amazing. And so it's a shame that you won't be able to experience it unless you're a Kickstarter backer. So that's kind of a knock on that book because it's so good. And so part of that then also leads into one of the criticisms, which is the story is quite a bit shorter. I think it might be even shorter than Neverland because the total section of this book is there's 850 sections, okay? So about 50 sections less than Neverland. And in that 850 sections, by the way, take a look at this this picture, amazing picture. This is actually the Wicked Witch of the West, believe it or not. So I love the artwork. I can't say enough about the artwork for this book. So in 850 sections, you have to squeeze in, not 1, not 2, not 3, you have to squeeze in 6, count them, 6 character arcs, 6 different viewpoints. And while you can cheat quite a bit and reuse certain ideas or sections, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of characters that you're having to calculate how they all interconnect and how they crisscross and how does one viewpoint change and all of that. So I think that the story, because of that, by necessity, has to be a little bit shorter, or else you can't squeeze in all of the unique beats for 6 different characters, which then is a shame because you made the story shorter. But part of the trade-off is that the story is shorter, but you get to enjoy more viewpoints. And of course, out of the 6, 2 of them are locked off from the average reader. So I have a bit of a problem with that. In Neverland, the bonus is the crocodile is very short. You can read all that in less than maybe 20 minutes. There's not that many sections. So the Easter egg really is an Easter egg, and it's a lot more truncated. And it's like an entire, like as long as Captain Hook's arc in Neverland, except from the point of view of the crocodile, which, by the way, wouldn't make any sense anyways, right? Because again, you're playing from the perspective of this animal. How long can this go, right? Like how long can this gimmick last before you tire of it? But in Wicked Wizard of Oz, again, I just said that the witch is like the best arc and you can't access it. So that's unfortunate. But overall, this is a very strong book. Like I said, great story, great riff on the traditional characters, 6 viewpoints if you can get them and figure out how to get them. Beautiful art, great mechanics, enjoyable, a lot of different abilities, a lot of different variability. Again, the only downside is you can't get 2 of the arcs, and the remaining ones that you do play tend to be a little bit too similar to each other in terms of the beats. So you're not really getting as diverse a story and as diverse an experience as the Neverland characters, okay? So I will end though, if you've stuck with me all the way through, I will end by helping you guys out, so that if you do buy this book, and by the way, this book is older, so it's a little bit harder to get. And, the list price for this is £9, $8.99, British pound sterling, but it's a bit more expensive than that because it's more rare, it's a little bit older, a little bit harder to get. I think you'll drop $20, I think, pretty easily when it comes after tax and shipping. But again, it's worth it to obtain it. So since I own it, I would like to help out people, who want to get those 2 characters. So I can't give you the starting statistics because again, you can only get that from a Kickstarter if you're one of the backers who backed at that level. They give you a bookmark with the character and all of the stats. So I can't give you the character's exact statistics. You'll have to make that up if you're really insistent on playing with the dice and all of that stuff. I tend to just read it. I tend to read it for the enjoyment of the story and the game design. I tend not to do the whole dice thing. I just assume I win and just play it through on that level. But for some of you who do, obviously that's going to be a problem. You have to kind of extrapolate and have to ask yourself, what do you think is the combat strength of a guy like Oz, for instance? Knowing that the heaviest hitters, which is the Lion and the Tin Man, have combat abilities of 10, and the Scarecrow, which is a lot more frail, is a 9, and of course, Dorothy, who's a girl, has a combat of 8. I mean, I think based on that, it would be fair to say that perhaps Oz should be a 9, right? He's certainly no Lion or Tin Man, but he's not Dorothy. I think 9 would be reasonable. You give him a endurance that is similar to a human being, right? And so, for instance, the Lion's endurance is 22, and the Tin Man's is 24. So that's definitely way high. There's no situation where the Wizard of Oz would have a 24, 22. Scarecrow has endurance of 18. He's just made out of straw. And Dorothy has endurance of 20. She's a human being. So it's reasonable to think that the Wizard of Oz should have an endurance of 20, right? Because again, he can't have the same endurance as the Lion. That's crazy. And the Lion's endurance is 22. So I would hazard that the Wizard's combat should be what was I going to say here? Yeah, I think his combat should be like a 9. His endurance should be, I would say, a 20. And then for agility, the Scarecrow has the least agility. Well, no, the Scarecrow's agility is an 8. The Tin Woodman is a 7. And the Lion as an animal is a 10. So the Oz can't be a 10. He's definitely better than a 7. Is he an 8 or a 9? Dorothy is a 9 and Scarecrow is an 8. I would probably put him again on par with Dorothy as a 9. So for the Wizard, I would guess that his stats should be similar to Dorothy's. I would give him agility of 9, combat a little bit better at 9 versus her 8, and the endurance I would say as a human the same, 20. Okay, now because the Wizard of Oz is a man of science, he's an inventor and a genius. Coincidentally or not coincidentally, if you were to buy the book, his story begins in section 314. Okay, so show you that 314. Now, what does 314 remind you of? Well, 3.14 obviously is pi, right? And so, as a little inside wink, Jonathan Green decided to start the Wizard of Oz's adventure on section 314. Now, as you read through, you're going to come through symbols that may force you to add or subtract various sections. So, for instance, for Dorothy, if you see a little tornado, you're supposed to subtract 10 from that section to read Dorothy's specific stuff. So, just to let you know, the Wizard of Oz specific section is a skull. This is the Wizard of Oz's section. Whenever you see the skull, you need to add 30 to the section. So in this case, if it's 387, you have to add 30 and go to page 417 to get the wizard's specific section. Okay, so hopefully that gives you the information you need. The Wizard of Oz, he starts at section 314 for his adventure, pi, 3.14, 314. His little icon, unique icon, is a skull. And whenever you see that, to get to the wizard specific section, you have to add 30 to that section. Now, what abilities does he have? Brains or whatever. So playing through the adventure, I can tell you that none of the actual characters have more than 3 special abilities to start. For instance, the Lion has Beastmaster, Fearsome, and Strength. Those are the the abilities that he has. The Tin Woodman has brains, lightning bolts, and strength. The Scarecrow has brains, Crowmaster, and fearsome. And Dorothy just has 2. She just has Over the Rainbow and The Pen is Mightier. So from the Wizard of Oz, playing through his section, I can tell you that he has brains. I can tell you that he has Over the Rainbow and The Pen is Mightier. Because again, if you remember from the narrative and from the source material, the Wizard of Oz is also not native to Oz. He came from Omaha, right? So he has the same special abilities as Dorothy, which is Over the Rainbow and The Pen is Mightier. And on top of that, because of course of his genius, he has brains. So those are the 3 abilities that he has. I don't think he has Beastmaster or Strength. Nothing else really makes sense for him. And he may or may not gain some special abilities during his adventure, but I think he starts off with that. So hopefully that will give you the information you need to play the wizard in the Wicked Wizard of Oz. Now let's move on to the Wicked Witch of the West, my favorite section, right? Or my favorite perspective. So for her, she starts off, now by the way, how did I get all this information? I tried to Google it, doesn't exist. This is not popular enough, it's not even on Reddit, if you can believe it or not. So all of this stuff is just through my own like hard work, actually flipping through and finding all the little details. So like I think one of the Amazon reviews, one of the Amazon UK reviews kind of complained about the same thing, and I think he put down 314 for the Wizard to start, which is correct, but he put out 600 for the Wicked Witch of the West, which is incorrect. Close, but no cigar. So for the witch, the Wicked Witch of the West, as you may actually guess appropriately, she starts her adventure from section 666, 666, right? That makes sense. She's the villain, the evil character. So she starts at 666, and in terms of her abilities, I've tracked it down to the following. She has brains, she has fearsome, and she has Crowmaster. So those are the 3 abilities that she starts out with. And again, she may add some later on, depending on how you play. Which again is something that I really enjoy, because for Neverland, you never pick up really new abilities. You may pick up extra uses of your own, but those abilities are assigned to you from the very beginning and never changes. So I do like the flexibility of the Wicked Wizard of Oz, where you start off with some, but any character can get one. Like for instance, depending on the choices you make, the Wizard of Oz actually can pick up a fearsome ability, which is not something that you would normally associate with a human being, or with it's usually associated with like the lion or the scarecrow. So I thought that was pretty neat. So again, I'm pretty confident that the witch, playing through her arc, her special abilities are brains, Crowmaster, and fearsome. Now, in terms of her statistics, her agility, combat, endurance, I definitely would put her endurance at, I would put her around 18 to 20. I mean, she as weak as the scarecrow. I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, she's humanoid as well, and both Dorothy and Wizard has 20. I would give her 20. Okay, I would give her 20. I think her combat is definitely weak. I think it's definitely on par with Dorothy. I would give it an 8. Okay, she's definitely not even on the level of a scarecrow. And her agility, I would put her agility, I would say, at a 9. I think it should be on par, and not as agile as not as agile as the lion with a 10, but definitely not as bad as a scarecrow at an 8, and Dorothy's a 9. So I would give her the Wicked Witch of the West agility 9, combat 8, and endurance 20. So essentially identical statistics to Dorothy. She's sort of like Dorothy's dark shadow, actually, if you think about it. Now let me go and show you her special symbol. So her special symbol is a lightning bolt. Okay. So I'm trying to remember one of the sections I know for sure. So here it is. So this is the section. You can see here, this is the lightning bolt. Whenever you see a lightning bolt, that is the Wicked Witch of the West's special symbol. And whenever you see that, you need to subtract 30 to go to the new section. So again, the wizard is a skull. You add 30. The Wicked Witch of the West is a lightning bolt. You subtract 30. Okay. And so that's a little bonus for you guys who stuck with me all the way to the end of the video. I'm going to try to do that if I can, just because, again, I feel it's a little bit controversial about this, but I feel like, hey, if enough time has passed and somebody paid, the money to buy the book, they should be able to enjoy the book that they bought. And I can see that I can see some, I guess, some window of exclusivity for the the Kickstarter backers who went in earlier. But I think, as time passes and the book is, maybe even out of print, you should be able to enjoy that. So hopefully that will prove useful to you. Okay. So once again, the Wicked Wizard of Oz. It's a great game book. Definitely good bang for your buck. 6 characters, all of them pretty interesting. I think the Wicked Witch of the West, personally, that viewpoint is worth the price of admission by itself. It's really fun to play through that. So next I'm gonna work on, I think, the Beowulf. That one actually, interestingly enough, both Beowulf and Krampus, which is book 4 and 5, they don't split. Okay, they don't split. So maybe he got a little bit tired of that, or maybe he couldn't figure out all the different viewpoints necessary. I think for Neverland and the Wicked Wizard of Oz, there's such a wealth of viewpoints. It's like a no-brainer. You got to have Captain Hook. You got to have Peter, Wendy, Tiger Lily, and of course for the Wizard of Oz, you got the witch, you got the wizard, you got Dorothy. These are classic characters, and so I think that's the reason why he decided to do that. Whereas with Beowulf or Krampus, maybe not quite the same. They're 500 sections, so they're shorter books. They're not 850, which is the Wicked Wizard, and Neverland, which is 900. It's insane. They're 500 each. And so it'll be interesting to kind of see that new dynamic. I feel like maybe it's going to play like more of my favorite fighting fantasy, just make it a longer, more interesting fighting fantasy game book. So those will be the next 2. And then again, I'm really hoping that eventually I will be able to get Alice's Nightmare, review that, and finish it off. I am one of the backers for a late backer, but still a backer. I still managed to squeeze in before he shut it down. And so I am doing the Dracula one as well. That'll be coming out next year in 2021. And with Dracula, he's gone back to the Neverland Wicked Wizard of Oz format, where you're going to play the game from different viewpoints. I think that one is you can play as Jonathan Harker, right? You can play Jonathan Harker, Mina, Dr. Seward, and then Dracula himself, which is pretty cool. And I have no doubt that, now that I know how he works with these Ace game books, I have no doubt that he's going to slip in a little Easter egg, another unknown little perspective. I wouldn't be surprised if he put that in. Maybe Van Helsing, right? So that's coming next year. So anyways, those are what I'm going to be working on. I'll still intersperse various statue reviews and mini reviews and other reviews that I find interesting. But those are the books that I've kind of been, reading and enjoying in between continuously dying on Killzone and Shadowfall, trying to do the impossible. But that's a subject of another video, hopefully, that I will one day be able to upload. So good night, and until next time, do take care.